What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Duel the Day podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in to another great guest episode we have for you today, featuring Kirk McCarley, aka the Seed Sower Coach. Following a 35-year career as a human resources executive, Kirk launched his business as a career and life coach, taking a unique approach to helping clients first consider possibilities and then act upon them to make dreams and passions a reality. Kirk has done that himself through also parlaying a part-time career as a production assistant with ESPN, as well as taking advantage of his interest in cycling through leading spinning classes. At 67 years old, an audience will learn from Kirk that it's never too late in life to discover what you were made for. As we had a great time chatting with Kirk, especially hearing his stories from his production career. Really cool to get a live look into his life experiences, and we're able to get some great takeaways from that, mainly around building relationships in a professional manner, exploring the power of vulnerability in life and in the workplace. But most importantly, that process of self-discovery, especially coming later in Kirk's life. It's great to see the look in with that. Again, we had an awesome time chatting with Kirk. We hope you guys enjoy the episode. Welcome, Kirk McCarley.
What I also find, it's those moments when I feel most awkward that are maybe creating the greatest impact.
Now, part of your background was working at ESPN. So what kind of exposure did you have to NFL owners, or what kind of people did you meet in NFL organizations?
Well, I still work for them. And in fact, had 4 NFL games this past year on radio. No Cowboy games, but we went to Vegas, we went to Phoenix, we went to New England. And guys, if you get a chance to go to LA and you haven't been to SoFi, it is amazing. It is like stepping into the future 200 years. It's like Logan's Run in football or something along those same lines. But I digress. Your question was, who did I rub elbows with as far as owners? Not so much owners, some GM type people. Bill Pullian, I've worked with him before.
Nice.
And some of the others who have had front office roles, and just their stories are amazing, as you could imagine.
Yeah, I bet, especially some of the guys that have been in the league for a long time. So it seems that you still do stuff with ESPN, but you obviously changed paths at some point to get into more of the coaching and things like that. Was there some piece of advice that you got from one of these GMs or people that you met through ESPN that kind of spurred you to go in that direction, or what caused that shift?
Well, I had 2 jobs 10 years ago. I was a human resources director in St. Louis, and I was also doing ESPN, mostly college stuff at that time. 57 years old. What do I want to do with the rest of my life? So I hired a coach myself and contemplated, what is my next role going to be to augment or to be my primary job to couple with ESPN. And about the 3rd meeting I had with my coach, I said, I want to do what you do. And so that's when that was launched. So that was about 2013. Nice. And I've been coaching for 10 years. I've been out of HR for 7 years now, I guess, altogether. I did a little bit of that simultaneously along with ESPN. So it was a person who actually does what I do for a living that helped guide me on that path, this path that I'm on now.
That's sweet. So did you create your own business? It looks like you did based on your website. I'm playing dumb here, but or did you do some coaching through ESPN as well or through any other organizations?
It was hanging at the shingle, and here I
Yeah.
am, and I'm learning as I go along. Gee, I got to do a website. And all of a sudden, I woke up one day, I didn't have staff to delegate things to anymore. It was the person I looked at in the mirror in the morning. And it's like, Bub, you better go figure this out. And so I did. But that's been an asset for ESPN, particularly post COVID, because so much of our broadcasting went remote. So I had to learn how to do what we're doing now and do the Unity app to communicate with the broadcast truck and learn to do things when I wasn't sitting next to someone. So it's been a brave new world for me with technology, which I still don't master as well as I need to.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you got to learn from someone who was doing coaching and that inspired you. It was I had a similar story with being introduced to Tony Robbins. So anytime like you find yourself in that situation where you feel inspired or drawn towards something because of what they're doing, I think it's a powerful thing for sure. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And you guys are turf people also, or one of you is.
Tyler is.
That's you,
Yep.
Tyler.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm really working towards all of my efforts in graduate school and with my post my I guess pre-work history in the world of turf. It's all culminating to reach the point to where I can say if someone addresses me as Dr. Van Landingham, and I can say, well, hold on, let's take a step back here. I'm really not that important. I can't save your life, but I can save your lawn. That's really what I'm trying to get at.
Trying to reach that point.
I was in turfgrass Mecca over the weekend. I had a bike ride in Tifton, Georgia.
Wow. All right. What'd you think? Amazing.
Some very nice hybrid Bermuda here and
Yes,
there. But
it is.
uh, but
It
the
is a very
grass is
nice surface. Very nice surface.
it is and great for golf course fairways. And if you want to spend a lot of time on a lawn grass, it can do that as well. But I did encounter a person on my ride, and it was a century ride, 100 miles. So he rode the last 30 miles with me, and a person of inspiration. It's said that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And so he starts off with a honey bun, a little Debbie, a payday, and washes it down with a Pepsi. And so
Solid.
I don't know how he does that and avoids pre-diabetes, but he does somehow.
And I
I
bet he's gonna live to be 125.
yeah.
He will.
There was two super old people that were featured on like CNN or 60 Minutes or something like that, and one was a guy who was smoking like 3 or 4 cigars a day, and he was like 102, and I'm like, how did you not die like 40 years ago, dude? How are you? Some people are just built different, I guess.
Super Bowl IV, famous shot. The Chiefs beat the Vikings 23-7. Len Dawson in the locker room with a little cig out of his mouth to celebrate that victory.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm actually a Vikings fan. So it's I tend to take I like the team that just kind of isn't very good, sits in the back, doesn't have a whole lot of drama, no Cowboy team of America, none of that stuff. So I like where I'm at. I like purple, but yeah, every time they show up, I see an infographic of Super Bowl wins and the Vikings are, not there. It does hurt a little bit.
But they've been there more than a few
Oh,
times.
they've been a few times. I don't know if that makes it better or worse.
A lot of
Because I'm
teams,
sure
it's
now
hard to
they're
get
they're
there.
competing. or they are. I actually did see this infographic during the last playoff run. Is that they are now competing for most Super Bowl appearances without a win. So there's that stat.
There's always the Bills to complement them. So
Yep.
you
And
could
it's
be in
yes,
Buffalo. Yeah.
they are. And the best part is I grew up about 45 minutes from Buffalo. So I have a lot of friends that are Buffalo fans, and while they like to give me crap about the Vikings, they're still leading that category I was just talking about. So.
Yep.
Oh, and their lake effect snow on top of it. So,
Ooh.
yeah. But the Vikings, visions of Bud Grant stoically on the sideline at Metropolitan Stadium with no jackets, no heaters, and shirt sleeves, and it's below zero. Those were men.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those were men.
Yeah.
They might have been Vikings, like in the literal sense.
Yeah.
Leif Erikson may have been on the team, but I had an interesting encounter. This was many years ago. I was working a game in Berkeley, and it was a rainy night to work Cal, and I ran into Joe Cap, and the dear departed Joe Cap, he was kind of pursuing me throughout the press box the whole evening. I kept running into him. He knew I was from Texas, so he was calling me Tex. Hey, Tex, you got those stats? How are you guys at ESPN doing? And it was an off and on conversation like that. Weird encounter. But again, talk about a tough quarterback, Joe Cap.
Yeah, they definitely were way stronger back in the day. I think I remember seeing stats on Jim Thorpe, and it's like this dude was a machine. He just way better at everything than everyone. And yeah, there's obviously when you look at professional athletes in today's day and age, like they're obviously strong and take care of their bodies and things like that. But I definitely think there's an element of that toughness, I guess we'll call it, that the older generations had a lot more of than we do today.
And your summer training, spring training for baseball, that was intended to get in shape for the season. You didn't have year-round fitness regimens. And in fact, a lot of these guys, they went and they were teachers and insurance salespeople, and they had other jobs that they did to augment their income. I read, I think it was Moneyball, that or maybe, no, it was October 1964 about the Cardinals and the Yankees. Great book by David Halberstam. But the average player's salary that year was 3 times what the average per capita income in the US was. By 1995, it had grown to 37 times that amount. And who knows what that is now, maybe a
Wow.
couple hundred
Yeah.
times. So just the times have changed with sports.
Yeah. Yeah. Now guys can go out and just play a sport, do one thing, and basically do nothing the rest of their lives if they're halfway decent at it or if they manage their money well. But yeah, back in the day, they didn't make that type of money. I watched the documentary on Nolan Ryan, and he talked about some of his initial paychecks, and it was like, I think a bonus for winning the division crown or something like that was like $5,000. It's like in today's money, it's like, what? Okay.
Yeah, you could take a trip to Disneyland, I guess, and
Yeah.
the kids would be happy.
Yeah. No, things have changed. Do you
Like,
go ahead, Ty?
oh, no, go ahead. I was gonna shift gears a little bit, but
Yeah, no, I was too.
Beans.
So
We're going to
beautiful.
shift gears.
We're gonna shift gears, and I use that analogy because I'm still like sad that I had to give up my stick shift car for a minivan a couple months ago.
Oh,
So yeah,
that's so
it
painful at 31.
it hits, doesn't it?
It does.
But it's for the greater. It's for the cause. It's for my family, right?
Yeah.
More so just because my wife refused to learn how to do it, which is probably something that helped our marriage out, because me trying to teach her that may have really caused some issues between us. Um, but no, anyways, what I wanted to kind of pick your brain at a little bit, Kirk, and as you were talking, how you kind of discovered these things, later in life that became passionate about, and you just started to pursue those passions. I think that story in itself is really powerful, and something to be really proud of. Like, I've talked to a lot of people that just feel like it's too late for me. I'm out of time. I'm stuck in the path that I'm on until I retire at God knows when. And here we are, right? I've made my decisions. Like, this is it. And your story, I feel like, is just so that path is so important now, because I think that age group of men between, I mean, you could even go as young as 18, but as old as 40, 45, even in their 50s, there's a big problem there. And that's really like kind of where we really want to focus some of our efforts, and with who we talk to try to help that group. Because even myself, I'm in that age, I'm in that demographic, and a lot of people that I interact with on a daily basis, whether it be at Ohio State University or elsewhere in the turf world, they they're almost they're purposeless. Um, they haven't quite figured out what satisfies their soul, but also makes sense to them about something that's worth doing and worth giving to the world. And that purposelessness is what I feel like is a major contributor to this confusion and this discourse in the male community, right? A lot of men don't know how to be men anymore. Like, society is shifting us in a way and putting men in a position to where all of your instincts, all of your um, um, what you would just normally want to act on. So instincts, I don't know why I tried to come up with another word for instincts, are inherently wrong, and are I feel like everyone is just really confused. And so I just wanted to pick your brain around this area of how men or anybody can find purpose in their life, no matter where they are, whether it's early on and they feel like they're in a program in school that their parents made them get into and they aren't happy with, or they're later on in a career that they feel they're just spinning their tires in and they're not adding the value that they feel that they were made for, to the world. So I kind of want to leave it open to that. I'm not going to ask you a direct question, but anywhere in that sphere, through your own experiences, through your own story and your own walk of life, what are kind of what comes to your mind when I lay that foundation for you?
Well, Tyler, there's a lot that's going on with that, and many different thoughts are coming to my mind. I do hear from a lot of people, late 20s, 30s, what is my purpose in life, at work, with my family? I hear about this imposter syndrome. People tend to think that I'm more than I think I am. Where am I headed on this roller coaster called life? This isn't reassuring in one way, but in another it is. My 30s were some of my toughest years, and you're growing out of early career. We'll take it back before that. College, fun times, maybe not married yet, maybe get married. We're still going to parties. We can burn the midnight oil. And then as happened with you, kids come along and responsibility kicks in and mouths to feed. And is there going to be enough income coming in to feed those mouths and put shoes on the baby? And just to try to maintain that sort of thing, you get to the point of, is this going to be all there is? But the positive of that set a foundation for later on. I learned so much. It was challenging at times. There were some things I didn't want to go through, but I did, such as about with clinical depression, and kind of felt I was in a wilderness experience for a period of time. Looking back on that many years hence, 30 years later, that was a critical period because it enabled me to have a greater understanding for where people such as you guys and a lot of the people that are your listeners are going through right now. So the encouragement, you will get through it, but learning can be painful. Um, Going through the studies, taking the test all throughout, and it still is as we have to go through new things, but you come to kind of a greater appreciation or understanding of it. And many of the things you thought were such a big deal at an earlier point in life turn out not to be later. And maturity has a lot to do with that, not sweating the small things as the phrase goes. And one other thing I'll chip in on that. I was talking with a client earlier today, 33, 34 years old, and he's hit this crossroads. And do I go in this direction or do I stay the course this way or take this route? It's kind of like Dorothy asking the scarecrow, which way do we go? And he points in both directions. The reassurance I gave him is the average person in their life is going to change careers 4 to 5 times. You may be getting ready for your first change. Guess what? There will probably be some more to follow that. It may happen to you at 60 like it did for me, but it's kind of enjoy this ride. There's going to be some turbulence right now, but it's going to smooth out.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the things, I don't know if you've thought about, your story, your life this way or not, but one of the things that I can't remember if I read or I saw a video somewhere a few years ago, but what I try to remind myself is everything that happens to us as individuals, it's another page in our story. It's another chapter in our life. And I feel that all of us are here to be able to share our stories. And our stories wouldn't be very interesting if they were the easy way. There was nothing wild that happened to the main character. There weren't any hardships that they had to overcome and get through and get past. It wouldn't be an interesting story. And when I started to think about, a lot of the things that came my way, some years ago and whatnot, is that this just makes it better. This just makes when I'm able to share this later in my life to help others get through their hardships. It's that's what the value is. Like that's why I believe that God puts us through these areas, these times of that we feel like we don't know what we're doing. We don't have anywhere to go. We don't have anyone to talk to. We're all alone. We all of the quote unquote kind of nonsense that gets into our heads. And so I love that the story analogy and where you are now, kind of looking back, making the career changes that you've made. If you look at your life as that story, everything's a new chapter, every page, every interaction, every instance that you thought at the time was awful and terrible. Is that metaphor to you, that analogy? Do you find that valuable in being able to tell people that they might understand that and be able to internalize and move through what it is that they're having issues with?
Absolutely, Tyler. And it's little things I find reflecting back on. Mitch Albom's book, The Five People You Meet in Heaven, talks about Eddie, who's the mechanic at the amusement park. It's probably like Coney Island that it's built around. 83 years old, he's still working there. How has my life mattered? This is all I've done. But Albom goes through five people who he had significant influence on and didn't even realize that. So for me, as I progress through life, I see more and more of those just little situations that you didn't think much of at the time, but they had a tremendous impact. One story that comes to mind when I was kind of in that lost period in my 30s, I was in a men's group, and one of the members of the group offered, because he knew I was struggling, to set me up with a therapist friend of his. He says, I'll pay for the session. Sit down with him for a half an hour. I think there's a good chance he's going to say something that is going to be important to you. So I did. I appreciated that. It was um, an agape, grace-filled gift that he gave me. But the therapist that I was talking to, he asked me to describe how I felt. And I used that wilderness example that I referred to a moment ago and said, I feel lost, like I'm in the wilderness. I'm really reaching out for God a lot, but I'm not getting any answers, but I keep reaching out. And there was a pause, and he said, then God's got you where he wants you. And I didn't realize at the time. I was kind of like, oh, that's not really that helpful. That doesn't give me anything. But I kept going back to it time after time. And now it makes perfect sense. And I've stolen that for some of the people that I work with who come to me lost. And depending on what their faith is, if they're a believer in a higher power, that higher power may have you exactly where he needs you to be right now. He or she needs you to be. What are you going to do with that?
That's a wonderful message. And I think more people need to realize that like we can make those types of changes at any point in life. And we're really not going to know our true impact or our true purpose until it's all gone. But at the same time, like we may go decades without impacting people the way we want, but there may be a time in life where we take that job at the amusement park or whatever it may be, and we have other impact with people later on in life. So to your point, like there may be times where people feel lost, but we're always lost for a reason. We just don't know that reason while we're lost. We usually learn that later. It's usually there to teach us a lesson. So yeah, that's a great perspective. I love that story.
Again, Nico, I didn't love it at the time, but that's that learning being
Yeah.
painful again. And I needed to go through it as it turned out because the story would have lacked a little bit of richness that I can now see, a little bit of color that's now present.
I think those moments of turbulence or trials and tribulations, those are the moments that teach us the most. When we do something air quotes wrong or something that we consider a failure or is super difficult, those are the moments that we learn the most from. Um, man, sometimes people are just too afraid to see that.
What I also find, it's those moments when I feel most awkward that are maybe creating the greatest impact. I always thought, okay,
Mm.
this oration, this speech, this talk that I gave to this group, that's really motivated them. No, not so much. I had a guy who was 40, 42. This was when I was working in St. Louis, and I was a mentor of sorts to him. But he came in and he said, "My girlfriend and I are going to have a baby, and I wanted to let you know we're going to go ahead and get married because of something you said about the sanctity of marriage." Well, that's great. Congratulations. And, we celebrated. And I'm like, what did I say and when did I say it? I
Yeah.
don't ever remember saying anything about that, but he thought I did. So, okay, we'll take it.
Did he ever tell you what you said? Did you ever find
I
out?
didn't ask. I didn't want to know. So
Yeah.
I just said, well, you're welcome.
That's hilarious. I'm sure we've all had moments like that. That's funny.
Yeah, again, those times that I don't remember saying anything like that or recalling this impact, and people will come back and give you credit for it. Likewise, those times when you think you made a tremendous influence, and they'll be honest with you and say, "Son, you didn't matter much at all. I decided this on my own." Great, I'm glad you did. So it takes me off the hook.
Great. Oh, did I lose you guys? Oh no.
No, I'm still here.
No,
The
we were frozen
pregnant
Oh,
there for a
sorry.
pause.
second.
Yeah.
My whole computer froze for a second. That was weird.
Got you
That's
back.
like
Okay.
the Zoom calls I have where the other person, they're frozen, they're not hearing you, and I still continue to talk in hopes that the gremlin will get through to them somehow. And then maybe after 10 seconds, they defreeze and they're back and just trying to act like nothing happened when I know good and well it did.
Yeah. We got through that. We're good to go. Sorry for that
Yes.
little pause there. Kirk, along this line of finding purpose and things like that, I wanted to ask if you ever encountered people in your career path that felt like a roadblock. And I want to preface this in a couple of ways. Sometimes those roadblocks can help you see the path that you actually want to go on. And then sometimes those roadblocks just help you push even harder on the path that you're currently on. Did you ever have a person like that in your career? Were people like that?
So let me ask that again. This was a roadblock for me that I had to navigate around, and it got me to a better place. I remember my first position out of college. I learned a lot. I mostly learned not what to do or what not to do, but substantial impact. Uh, it was a plant, some really grotesque industrial accidents that took place that created impact about why should you not have a ponytail around a lathe machine, for example? Or why do you not place cardboard underneath a furnace that is dripping oil? And I learned a lot about safety, but I also learned this is not the kind of work environment that you need to be in, and learn that you need to take care of yourself in your career. And it may be time to look for another opportunity that is going to be, let's say, more professional than what I'd been encountering at that time. Really wasn't a roadblock other than a sign that, okay, you've gotten a little bit of experience. It's time to move on down the road because this is not going to be a good place for you. Having said that, that's 40 years ago. I'm working on a book right now, and I point out lessons from that. One of which
Wow.
was the person who was in one of the industrial accidents with fire. Sadly, he burned to death, but he survived the injury for several days. And I went to see him in the
Oof.
hospital, And it was one of the most painful, excruciating things I've ever witnessed. But the one time in my life that I had no words to say, things go through your head. How's it going? How are you? Nothing at all was appropriate. But it gave me a foundation. Sometimes words are just inadequate, and presenteeism is what is
Mm.
needed at that point in time. So, roadblocks, obstacles, rerouting of trips to what comes next, and allowing that to happen and being assertive in trying to seek that out.
That's a very impactful story. Um, and the reason why I ask is because I hope our listeners see that, like, even in super difficult moments in a career, a job, decision, whatever it may be, once we get past that and look back, those moments don't seem as terrible as they did when they were happening. We learn from them. They cause us to shift the direction or pursue something else or continue that pursuit of whatever we were doing before. But those are always just little shifts in the river, I guess. They direct us in a slightly different path exactly when they need to. So I hope that's what people hear when they listen to that story, because I can't imagine that. Wow.
They then become part of your story. I encountered this. I witnessed this. I felt inadequate at that time. So I hear you talking about not having the right words, talking to somebody, or feeling inadequate. I hear what you're saying. Tell me more about what your experience is with that and what you're going through. And chances are high that we're at a similar place, you now and me back then, and remembering that.
That's great.
Yeah, I want to jump on what you said there about presenteeism. We were talking with a gentleman a couple weeks ago, um, that their main message was vulnerability, right? Being we all have issues, we all have problems. Let's not keep it to ourselves and suffer with it alone, right? And one of the things that came up in that conversation was how you can be working side by side with people every day, week in, week out, and you're both going through the same problems, but yet you tackle them individually. Being where you are now, had you experienced anything like that in your career path, to where maybe at one point in your life you really kept a lot of things to yourself and dealt with them internally, and then a switch flipped and you were able to talk about things better? What did that look like for you? And I guess when you're talking with clients now, do you have a message around being vulnerable, being able to talk to others about your problems, and just being part of a community, just trying to help each other out?
I tend by nature to be pretty introverted, actually. I'm very happy with my own company. So I do these long bike rides. If I'm alone for hours, that's great. Although I love the company of people as well. But with a tendency to kind of play the cards close to the vest, so to speak, a lot of that is related to safety and trust. Can I trust this individual with what I feel inclined to share? This is very personal. How are they going to deal with it? Are they going to share it with others? And some people are an open book about that. They can just jump right in. Me, I've got to really develop a relationship and get to know that person. And do I have confidence in what I want to tell them? Uh, I know a lot of my clients will go through that experience as well. So when I meet with them, I want to cultivate an environment that is going to build upon a relationship. It's going to create safety. There's going to be a certain sanctity. There's going to be an understanding of confidentiality, that what is shared here is not going to go beyond what you're telling me at this point in time, unless I'm hearing something along the lines of I'm tired of my life. I'm thinking about taking drastic measures. Then, as a professional, I have a responsibility to deal with that. I want people to be safe and to not harm themselves or others. So those are the keys. Creating that. Many people in my life did that for me. I opened up to some I did not. There were some people that I just didn't discern that I could trust with what I was going to say. And so I was much less forthcoming, kept it bottled up stuff, so to speak, which is not necessarily healthy, but it may have been the appropriate thing to do at that time and in that circumstance. Uh, a colleague of mine, she's a therapist, a social worker, and she is who I shared some things with during a particularly difficult time of my life. And she gave me some really elegant words because I was going through anger, which is associated with fear, and having a lot of anxiety and panicking about things. She said, go towards your fear. That seems counterintuitive, but it was right.
Yep.
I've got to address it. And I had a fear of flying. I did a high ropes course. That did a lot to help me get over that. And the reason I use that flying analogy, she had a fear of flying. And so I later returned the favor to her. You're not in control when you're in the plane. Sit back, relax. It's the safest way to travel. Read, meditate, pray, contemplate. And it helped her go a long way later in life to overcome her air travel trepidation.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The scenario that I kind of play in my head, and I'll use myself as an example, is I totally agree with you where it's that I think you want to build that rapport, that trust, like you want to keep things close uh, to the chest. But at the same time, I feel like it would be really helpful to sort of normalize um, being able to share things that we're struggling with or things that we're feeling, right? To use myself as an example, like I picture all of the hours that I was in the lunchroom at the golf course that I worked at for almost 10 years, and 99% of that time we're talking about, absolute nonsense with Jerry Springer on the TV, because that's what the Hispanics like to watch at lunchtime was Jerry Springer. So
That's hilarious.
it was hysterical because, in the times where things were going crazy on his show, the 3, 4 of those guys are all like, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry in the background. And it was hilarious. But I use that as an example because a lot of times where, maybe I took lunch a little bit earlier or later in the day, and there's just, 1 or 2 other guys there that, I work with 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And instead of saying something just stupid or profane about the TV show or just a sporting event, just being like, hey, this is what I'm is on my mind. This is what's going on with me, or maybe I'm having a relationship issue or a money issue. Like, have you ever gone through something like that? And maybe I'm naive at the fact, but I feel like
as opposed to
being invited into a conversation that way, most people are probably going to be able to
making themselves
either
vulnerable
relate to you
and
by
coming
something that
forward,
happened with them in the
and
past,
don't
something
jump
that they're
in with a
currently going through,
solution. Don't interrupt.
Or maybe it is going to
Turn
be
the
that rare
thermostat
case
down a
of,
little bit
oh
in
my gosh, I
terms
can't
of
believe
your
you told me you're having a
manner.
problem with your wife.
Focus
Like,
your
I'm going to go tell
attention.
the whole
Put
crew,
down the cell
you know,
phone.
in that rare
You've
case
got my
scenario.
rapt
But
attention now, brother.
I'm just curious to
I'm
what your
listening.
thoughts are on
And allow
normalizing
them
that
to
sort of thing,
speak.
to where,
Slow
you
that
know,
pace
us
down.
as men, where we really
Repeat
try to
back
keep
what
those
you're
things close
hearing.
to our chest
So what I'm
because
hearing
we
you
want
say
to
is you've got a
feel strong
challenge
and
with
feel powerful and feel like we're in
finances. The
control and we
credit
have
card bills
everything
are
figured
out of
out,
control.
to the
Or
point
you
to
and your
where
wife
we
can't seem
can
to get on the
talk about
same
those things
page
with
about this
all of our
particular
brothers
area, or there are
and heal
disagreements
and move
with how
forward
you are
together.
handling
Um,
discipline with the
I
young
don't know what
kids.
your opinion
Uh,
is on
am
that.
I
If
hearing
there's
you
ways that you
accurately
think we
and
can
correctly?
facilitate that
Yes.
moving forward in
Okay, tell me
today's
more. You got
landscape,
my
but
attention.
go
What you're
ahead.
doing is actually deploying a coaching technique, but you're also giving them safety to share more. And you're creating an environment which is meeting one of the fundamental needs of the human soul, and that's to be heard and understood. There's not necessarily a solution that is being voiced. Oh, I went through that before. This is what I did. It's done. No, that stifles the conversation. Ask questions, invoke curiosity. What are you thinking about doing? What does your wife think about doing in this situation? What has worked for you guys previously as you've dealt with similar type scenarios? And give the person the opportunity to come up with their own solution, as opposed to you giving them the idea. We've got it stuck up in here more often than not. It's just asking the right questions to draw that out. And it's like my conversation about getting married because there's a child on the way. They may say at the end, "You really helped me." And you're wondering, what the heck did I just do? I didn't say anything, but you did a lot because you were there, you were present, you were listening to them and giving them a confidential, sacred, uninterrupted time.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was awesome.
Beautiful.
Yep.
And I'm glad how you positioned it to the receivers of that information, because that's really where those conversations stop. I think a lot of men do have moments where they're vulnerable with their friends, but sometimes their friends just cut them off, or they joke back at them, or call them a silly name, or whatever the case may be. But if they listen to your instructions that you just gave out right now, they'll be able to be vulnerable a lot more. So that was wonderful.
Well, you're welcome. Our relationships change over time. And there are people that I know from years ago that we had our relationship then and we laugh about it, but the relationship hasn't progressed really to where we all are at this point in time. And we get gifted because new relationships come into our lives that maybe not don't have the depth of the memories, but the new memories are being created and they're growing and moving us forward. But we still relish those old relationships. They may just not be what we need at the moment that we're in right now. And that's just called maturity. That's okay. I've got people that I've been texting, not texting, but in communication with 50, 60 years now. And we just pick right back up on stuff we're talking about. That's history and that's rich. And I am very fortunate to have that.
That's awesome. Well,
And what's the sorry, Nico. What's
you're good.
you might be able to, you might remember this, Kirk. I'm trying to remember the quote that just kind of corresponds to what you just said. What is it? The people come into your life for a moment, a season,
Or a lifetime.
or a lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought I was going to have more on top of that, but I was really just focused on whatever that was.
That's
Yeah,
a great thing.
that's more eloquent than I would have had, I'm afraid. Yeah, and I've had a great partner through life with the the girl the woman I'm married to, woman I've married to, she's been with me, put up with me for 44 years and has been a great friend, and we've had a lot of life experience together. It's made me better as a man. So guys, if you've got a good partner, a good wife with you right now, good for you. Stick with it. It'll
Hold
be
on
worth
to
it.
them.
That's right.
That's
She should
awesome.
have trashed me a long time ago.
Well, guys, I hate to do this, but in the essence of time, we're about an hour here, and I think it's a good place to stop it. So I'm not sure if Ty, you had any other questions or you wanted to say
Yeah,
something else.
no, just appreciate your time, Kirk, your insights, responding to my seemingly novel like questions now that I think about it. So I really appreciate that. And I mean, where in this time, promote yourself a little bit, what you're currently working on. I know you mentioned a book you're working on. Tell everybody a little bit about that, where people can find you, interact with you, all those type of things.
Yeah, my coaching business is the Seed Sower Coach, and that's where I can be found at my website, the Seed Sower Coach, www.coach.com, www.theseedsowercoach.com. There we go. I
There it
spit
is.
that out.
There you
I'm
go.
on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I've got frequent blogs that are on my website and on those two other social media as well. Uh, I'm primarily an executive career and interviewing coach, but life always intersects those areas as well. So oftentimes we're focused on career, we get into relationship, we get into finance, spirituality, leisure time, other things along those lines as well. The book I'm working on right now is called Thoughts for My Kids and Other People's Kids. And it touches upon some of the things we've been discussing today, things I've experienced, things I've watched in communication, things that seem to work, other things that don't work as well. There's some sports stories in there, some nuggets of wisdom, some ideas from biblical scripture. So there's a lot that's packed into it. And how it came together was my blogs. I've got all these blogs. I need to do something with them. So they're going into a book. So I appreciate you guys having me. I hope I haven't done anything to dissuade people from availing themselves of my services this evening, because we've covered a lot of ground, some congruent with coaching, others congruent with other stuff.
No,
Yes.
I think you sent great messages today, and honestly, I think we'd both love to set up some time with you to talk about the book and go into more of those types of conversations. So it was a pleasure speaking with you, and wonderful messages and stories for sure.
Thank you again, guys. My
Thank you.
pleasure.